Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of The Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Unscripted with Ashley Russo. We're here to give you the stories and the people behind all of the interesting things happening here in the Lehigh Valley. And I am joined by one of the most fascinating and special women I know, Baum from Capital Blue Cross, and a new author. So Anne, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, you have a very interesting job and I guess I would say almost persona here in the Lehigh Valley. You are certainly known as your role with Capital Blue Cross, but you do many, many more things. So I'd love to go back and find out a little bit about little Anne.
Oh,
Who's little Annie Corley? Where did you grow up? Tell me about your family.
So I grew up in Glenview, which is a suburb of Chicago in Illinois.
Which you can tell when you say the word Chicago.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Every once in a while people will say, where is that odd accent from? But I don't think I have that really harsh Chicago accent.
Just once in a while in a couple of words. So, okay, we got the Midwestern, outside of Chicago.
Yes. So it's funny that you said Annie Corley, because my grandpa used to call me Annie Rooney.
I had a feeling.
I had no idea what he was doing it after Andy Rooney, but I had no idea. I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So.
Were you always Anne, or did people call you Annie?
I was always Anne, but sometimes when I was a camp counselor, I was Corky.
Corky?
Yes,
really?
This was my camp counselor name.
Interesting. All
yes,
right.
don't call me Corky, though.
I will not, but that is a good tidbit to know about you. All right, so you grew up, did you have brothers and sisters? Where'd you fall in your family?
So I'm the oldest, and I have two younger brothers. One's 2 years younger than me, and one is 6 years younger than me. And
what about your parents?
My parents met, they have a cute story.
Okay.
They both went to University of Illinois, and my mom was the president of the Women's Glee Club, and my dad was the president of the Men's Glee Club, and they met, and the rest was history. So
You're
it's kind of
kidding.
cute.
So they were sort of the pitch perfect before
Yes.
there was a movie. I mean,
Yes,
they could
that's very
claim they
cute.
inspired that. I love that. And did they remain singing? Was singing a
They
part
did.
of your family, your upbringing?
They did. Now, that gene did not pass to me,
So don't
sadly.
ask me to sing anything.
No, that would be the end of the podcast. But yes, they sang, when they graduated, they sang with the Chicago Symphony Chorus for many years. And my mom, even today, she's 81, she sings with her church choir.
That's so neat.
They love
I love that.
singing
So
and
music was a part of your childhood.
Always, yes.
All right, well, before we go much further into the podcast, I want to let you know that we've had some wonderful wine here for you today. You did tell us your favorite wine is either a rosé or a Pinot Noir.
Yes.
So we have a One Hope Pinot Noir. Do you know about One Hope?
I do not.
So 15% of the proceeds are donated to a charity of your choice. And because you and I serve on the United Way board together, our case, I bought a case. I'm sharing a bottle with you, but I bought a case that will be donated to United Way.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you can drink and feel good about it.
Well, thank you.
All right?
I love that.
So
and
we'll
I
give
never
you a
heard of
little-
it before, so
Isn't that
thank you
neat?
for sharing that
It's
with
great.
me.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. We've got some cheese here too. It's cheese and crackers.
Thank
in
you.
case you want a little snack.
Thank you.
Fun time of day. All right, so growing up, what were some of the things you were into? Did you play sports? Were you into music? What kind of student were you?
So with my parents being musicians, my mom was a music teacher, and so we had music. So from the time I was little, I took like these rhythm classes at Northwestern, and then when I was a very young girl, I played the harp. So
Wow,
I
that's
played the
interesting.
harp from when I was probably like 3 or 4 until I was in high school.
Now, does the harp grow like the violin grows with the child?
Sort of. So you have what's called a troubadour, which doesn't have the pedals and everything. You have to change things by
Okay.
hand. It's a smaller harp, and then pretty early in your harp career, you switch over to a full size.
That's interesting. What did you like about playing the harp?
Well, I liked when you could do like the glissandos and make lots of
that's
really
fancy.
cool flowy sounds. I didn't like practicing though.
Who
My
likes
mom
practicing? This is
My
what I
mom
wanna
would wake me
know.
up like before school at like 6 in the morning to
that's the worst.
practice, and so I sort of grew to
I have to tell you,
dislike
there
the
is an interesting
practicing.
correlation between being woken up before school to do something and not liking it. I've talked to several people who had this experience with either sports or music. And something about that practice time, and I think when you're a kid, you want to sleep, right? So
Yes, or you just don't want to get up and practice, so it gives this bad connotation. Yet, when I was a swimmer, I had no problem getting up to go to the early morning practice.
You like that?
Because it was my choice. So I think it was sort of not my choice to get up early and to the practicing.
So
I don't know.
All right, so you played the harp.
Yes, I played the harp.
You were a swimmer. What stroke?
Well, I first started as a diver.
Okay.
And then I became a swimmer later, later in my career. I was in like elementary school, right? But I loved freestyle, but I was better at backstroke. So I'd always get tagged to be the backstroker, like in the relay.
Wish you were doing the freelance.
But yeah,
freestyle.
so my preference was freestyle.
Good exercise.
But backstroke was my thing.
Fun, very nice. And what about your brothers?
So we were all swimmers. My brothers played the violin. So I apparently, when I was very young, told my parent I didn't want to play the violin. They needed to get me a harp, and they did, which is astounding.
So your parents might have had ideas of band grandeur, or Partridge Family, or something.
Oh, we had one. So we had. So my mom's friend was Jeanette Creston, and she had 3 girls who have since gone on to be real musicians. Like one of them is the concert mistress at. I believe she's in Germany, like for the symphony
so
in
really
Germany.
Serious.
They're really good. But we had the Cressley Quartet. So I would play the harp. One of the girls played the cello. My brother played the violin. So yes, we had this.
And did you play at parties and family things?
Oh yes.
Oh wow.
They rolled us out at all. So imagine we're at a party and someone rolls out the kid quartets, and we'd all be like,
I'm going to tell you why I can imagine this, because my daughter Renna has picked up the ukulele. She was very insistent upon this ukulele.
That's awesome.
It is, and we said, oh, it's silly. You're not going to really play. Well, she has self-taught. She has learned dozens of songs in less than a couple of months, and I, of course,
do you roll her out at parties?
Mother, I keep trying to. I keep saying, this would be great. Of course, she's doing it for her own self-enjoyment.
Right, and not for your own.
She says it's very, and I think she's like a circus puppet that I can take somewhere.
So
but
clearly,
I'm going to discuss this with your mother when I see her
well,
next.
And I'll be happy to talk to Renna about it in the positive aspects.
All right, that didn't scar you.
Character building and
yes, I like that.
So yeah, they rolled me out for everything: church, sorority events, dinner parties. Yes.
Wonderful. That's fun.
Yeah, so whether it was the Cressley Quartet or lugging the harp around.
So it's in there somewhere. This was a big part of your childhood.
Yes.
And then what happened? Where'd you go to school? What'd you want to do?
So I went to Glenbrook South High School, which is in Glenview, and the reason the harp did not continue is we didn't have a harp in the orchestra. So
that's
so I was the oboe player in the band.
Oh my gosh.
Now, why was I the oboe player? Because that's what we had in our closet.
Oh, all right.
Did I want to be a flute player?
Yes, you did.
Did I get to be the oboe player?
Yes. But you picked it up.
I did.
I mean, good enough to be in the band.
Oh yeah, and the cool thing about the marching band was the oboe can't march, so I got to be a flag girl. And that was
great.
Cool. I
and
actually
those are good
did
costumes
like it.
Usually.
Yes, and you got to throw the flags around, and we were good. Like we went to the Rose Bowl parade, Macy's parade.
Oh, that's exciting.
So we were
very nice. What were your colors?
Blue and gold.
Oh, no. Okay,
yes,
very nice.
Titans.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so, but you were never a cheerleader, because I know that your daughter is a very accomplished cheerleader.
Yes, she is.
But that is her own thing. That wasn't because you were a cheerleader.
It was not.
Okay.
I always, it was one of those wished but never try things.
Me
like,
neither.
oh, I wish I would be but I was like.
I didn't go to a school with cheerleaders. It wasn't even an option. I didn't even, isn't that strange?
Wow, I didn't know there was such a thing.
Well, it was a small all-girls Catholic school.
Oh,
I don't know.
so who are you going to cheer for?
I guess the boys' school maybe, but we just didn't have it.
I don't know, that would be weird.
I think so.
So yes, I did not, I thought it would be cool to come to school and wear the uniform, but no, I didn't.
I love it. So you got to the Rose Bowl.
Yes, which was really, really cool.
Okay, so we've got, you've already told us a lot of interesting things, and I've known you kind of a long time, and we've talked about
these aren't things I typically roll out.
But I love it. I love it. This is so interesting. Well, did any of this lead you to an idea of what you might want to do? I mean, did any of it have an influence? What did you end up studying and why?
So I always loved medical TV shows, so like emergency and things like this. So I decided I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't really know what that
Entailed.
entailed.
Okay.
So I started school, I went to University of Illinois, I started school as a chemistry major, quickly switched to biology, and then about halfway through my junior year, which by the way is a horrible time to decide this, I decided that I didn't really like science.
And you'd taken a lot of science
Oh yeah,
courses.
well I definitely tried it to the extent that I was sure
Well,
it wasn't my thing.
I will tell you something that's sort of the opposite, yet equally as sort of funny. My husband, Joe, as you know, is a physician.
Yes.
And he went to school as an English major and was liberal arts and had no idea of science, and actually took his freshman science course was geology. So he wasted an entire science only to change his mind in the middle of sophomore year to go
that's
pre-med.
great. That actually makes me feel better.
Yeah, and then he had to make up all the courses in the summers because he had
That's
taken
great.
geology. Although, by the way, he says geology was one of the hardest science classes.
I bet it would be, because there's all the layers of the earth and everything.
Lots of memorization. Anyway, we digress, but
it's good.
Science,
that's
yeah.
good. So anyway, my senior year, I took some healthcare business classes, and I fell in love with that because I did always love the healthcare industry. So I then pursued my master's in health systems management, which is the management of hospitals and health systems.
interesting. What a cool way to marry what you really sort of thought was an interest in medicine, and it still was, but just a different aspect of it.
Yes, the different side of it.
There's so many careers like that where there's that forward-facing position, which is what I guess people think I want to be that. They don't realize that there are all those support positions and other ways and other pieces that kind of make the business work.
Right, and especially in healthcare, because you might love the law, and healthcare has a law aspect to it. You might love engineering, and healthcare has an engineering component to it. So it's not something that I think it's something we could teach better to kids. If you have a passion about a particular industry, in almost every industry, you can find a job that you like that suits your skill set and talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So along the way in this journey, you get out of college, and what brings you to Pennsylvania? How do you end up here?
I was working for a consulting firm, and St. Luke's was one of our customers. I worked for Premier, which is a national buying consortium, and they have a consulting division. And my expertise at this point was building physician hospital organizations, which now is kind of a unnecessary role. Maybe I'll cheers you in.
Let's do that. It's only right,
yes.
really.
So now most hospitals, the physicians are employed by them, so you didn't need these organizations.
Right, but at the time, that was not the way it was.
They didn't have it. So we would go around the country and set up these partnerships between the physicians, independent physicians, and the hospitals. And this was my expertise. So St. Luke's had one, and right after my son Reed, who you've met, was born.
Who we should mention actually interned with us and is a filmmaker now in Los Angeles. So he's one of your pride stories of success.
Yeah, like successfully interned.
Isn't that amazing?
Yay.
Yeah. Anyways, full
it's
circle,
cool.
but it is very cool.
And he was so excited that you were in the movie.
The Billboard movie. Yeah, that was great.
Which you were a very good mean girl, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It was acting, pure acting, Anne.
It seemed rather natural.
We'll think on that. It was just all my.
You were very, very.
Did you like that? Stern.
Good. Yeah, it was good. It was very entertaining. So anyway,
you had just had your son Reed.
Yeah. So I had been commuting back and forth to all our different locations. So whether it was Mississippi, all these things. So all of a sudden I've got a child now. I'm like, oh. Well, what do we do about that? I don't know if I want to
be on the road all the time.
So my boss comes in to me and says, hey, they need this interim executive director in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Now, I never heard of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. All I could think of was smoky steel, who knows what. And I said, well, I can go if I can bring my son. He was,
that was it?
Yeah, well, he was like 3 months old.
So you meant literally bring him to the job?
Yeah, back and forth.
Okay.
And I really can't believe I had the guts to do that, but I did, and he said yes. So St. Luke's has their daycare on campus, and one of the board members let me live in her condo, and they had a little crib there. And so Reed and I would leave on Sunday nights and we'd come to Bethlehem Monday through Thursday, and then we'd fly back home to Chicago.
That is incredible. I did not know that piece. So how long did that go on?
That lasted until, I want to say like April of the following year, so maybe like 3 or 4 months. And
Okay.
in the meantime, they were looking for somebody to be the executive director. And then one day, Rick Anderson picked me up from the office where I was getting Reed from the daycare and gave me a ride home. I'm like, oh, well, that's nice, but... And anyway, he said, would you be interested
Really?
in interviewing for the job and staying, which had never really crossed
Yeah.
my mind. So interviewed and brought Brad out because, of course, he had never been
Now,
to
is your
Bethlehem.
husband Brad also from the Midwest?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay. And you guys had met out there, and he's living and working, and you're commuting back and forth.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So
And-
we met in 7th grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, on the bus.
So he was privy to the harp and the oboe and the flag.
Oh, yes, he was
Oh,
in the
okay.
band too. He played the
Oh.
clarinet, but he didn't really like that at all.
I love it.
Yeah, so next time you see him, you can ask him
I
to play
will.
the clarinet.
Okay. I
for
feel
you.
like I see some sort of musical reunion happening. I'm really.
It would be really scary and awful.
It could be
would
fun,
sound
though.
terrible.
But it could be fun.
Maybe like lip
regardless.
syncing or
Oh,
something.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, we thought we'd stay a couple years, and now we've been here for over 20 years and absolutely love the Valley.
Something people I often find when I'm talking to them and we're talking about strong women and people with this background, you've got a book. We're going to talk about your book in a minute. But before we get to that, you have also had your own business for many
Yes.
years. So you have had your job at St. Luke's. You made the move to Capital Blue Cross, which we'll talk about that as well. But tell me a little bit about your I don't want to call it a side gig. I mean, that's the thing they call it a side hustle. But you have a business. So tell us about that business that people don't know this about you.
Oh, well, I do have it, and it was actually my interim between St. Luke's and Capital. So we had these executive coaches that we were working with at St. Luke's, and I got to talking with her, and she had us fill out this little survey. What, if you could do anything, what would you do? So I write down, own my own business, and then all of a sudden I planted the seed in my mind. So I left St. Luke's to start Vision Accomplished, which started out as a healthcare consulting firm, but really evolved into coaching, culture development, leadership development, and I found along the way a great friend and mentor, Elmer Gates. We met through
what a
the
wonderful
chamber board, and we found when we got to know each other that we had so much in common, and I'd always dreamed of linking the senior leaders in the Valley with aspiring leaders in the Valley, because there wasn't...
So important.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there wasn't really that connection like there is today. There was kind of this group of primarily men who were out there doing their thing, leading the Valley, but there wasn't an easy way for them to be bringing in and sharing their expertise with younger aspiring leaders. So one of the things that Elmer and I tried to do was do that, bridge that gap between these generations and help share leadership skills and development and things like that.
How important, sort of call them the executive functioning or the soft skills. And, people go to school and we talk about what you study, but how important are those soft skills, and kind of what are some of the key, takeaways that you want people to know from you when you're doing this coaching or when you're just interacting with people?
Well, I think that there are a lot of things that accidentally get in our way that people won't necessarily share with you. So if somebody's not an attentive listener, they're always talking over somebody else, or even if you're not put together or arrive on time, or any little things can make all the difference in how somebody perceives your total package. And if you can pay attention to these soft skills and put those ahead of everything, you still have to be prepared, you still have to know your stuff, you still have to
Right.
be really excellent at what you do and what your knowledge base is. But you can, if these soft skills aren't also polished, it can kill the whole deal before it's begun.
It really is interesting how often that little. I remember someone that we were probably both there, but at some event there was a strong female leader who had come in from somewhere else that was talking to the group. And she said that she took every single candidate that was a finalist for a job in her company, and this was a big company, out to dinner. And based on the way the dinner went, and knowing what fork to use, and knowing manners, and putting your napkin on your lap, that was the difference of who she hired.
Yes.
It was very interesting. She said, we got all kinds of candidates that were great on paper. They had the right education. They knew their stuff. But we knew that if they didn't have those other pieces, they wouldn't be successful. And I think that seems to be so much of what your message is. And now you've got this book.
I do.
So I've got your book here, Small Mistakes, Big
Thank
Consequences. And it is pretty incredible. I have to tell you, it's a quick, insightful read that you want to share with everyone you know immediately. And so the tagline is develop your soft skills to help you succeed. So tell me why you wrote this book, what it came out of, and what advice is in there for people.
Well, the reason I wrote it is to help people learn from things that I learned along the way. Because everybody makes mistakes. And had maybe I known some things, maybe I wouldn't have made those mistakes. And so I feel like there's an obligation there, sort of like building the leadership program that Elmer and I did for us that are now wise to share our information back with other people and help make people aware. And I tried to do it in a funny way. So
you give good examples that are funny and relatable in stories.
Yeah, and it's not designed to label people or have you judge people. It's just designed to say, hey, when you do this, people will probably think this thing which isn't so helpful.
Yeah, this could be
and
how
here's
it's
how
perceived.
You could fix it.
Yeah. You also bring up a lot of things I think people are afraid or hesitant to talk about. And so where does it come in? Where did you get this ability to, you are known as always smiling, which you really are.
Thank you.
You're very, very kind. You have a very warm aura about you when you walk in a room.
Thank you.
I think that's pretty universally thought. But you are able to tackle some conversations and topics that might require a directness that people don't necessarily think go with a kindness. So where do you think you learned that balance of being kind but being direct?
Well, I think some things you learn by bad examples. And one of the things that drives me crazy is if somebody has an issue, but they don't speak about it in an open, honest, and in a kind way, it's never going to change. And so when somebody just complains about the behavior of another person but doesn't
address it,
do anything to address it, over time that just becomes tiresome, frankly. And I have tried really hard, especially through coaching, to learn how to be open and honest with people in a productive and constructive manner. Because you can't come in and just criticize people and slam them into the ground. That won't help. But if you explain to them how a behavior or even the words that they use or a style that they have or the emails that they write, how other people perceive them, and tell them how they can adjust that and really help them learn how to change that, then they can own it better and it's more achievable.
And they're less on the defensive. I think that it provides people a mirror and the opportunity to maybe see where they need to change and improve without feeling like everything they're doing is wrong.
Right, because most people are most critical of themselves.
Of course.
And especially women. So if you come in to somebody and say, may I offer you some constructive criticism? Immediately, everybody, their defenses go up. Their thought process is, oh no, somebody figured me out. They figured out all the bad things about me. And that's not the point. The point is to help somebody be better, to be the best that they can possibly be, and to learn about things that they might be doing that are getting in the way that they don't realize.
When you talk about women being hard on themselves, I want to talk to you a little bit about motherhood.
Yeah,
because you have had a very successful career that's very forward-facing. You're very involved with the community. You're involved with the Chamber, United Way, lots of organizations, and you've raised 2 children. One has graduated college, and Shay is right on her way, I think, right?
Yes,
Close?
yes, she's a senior.
She's a senior.
Yes. They're still on the payroll, though. We got to.
Yeah, well,
that's the next step.
it's the next step. But that they're not living
They're
at
on
home.
their way.
That's something.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that journey. Women are tough on ourselves. We're talking to our mutual friend, Elaine Pavinsky from Franklin Hill in one of our earlier podcasts, and she talks about that guilt as a mother, and she said, I still have it today. So talk to me about being a working mom and growing your career and yourself and also raising your kids.
So it's a balance, and every day it's a different balance. And I'm in no way, shape, or form perfect. I had my good, successful days, and I had my horrible disaster days. Everybody does. I think the key to it is determining what your personal priorities are, and then balancing each day based around that. So from my perspective, especially when my kids were younger, a sick kid, that's a priority of the day. And so if that means you've got to restructure the calendar,
that's what you do.
That's what you do. Now, sometimes that doesn't work. So you've got to also have a strong and willing partner. So there's no question that if I were doing this with either on my own or without Brad, it wouldn't work. So some days it was like, oh my gosh, we have this customer coming in. Ree's got to go to the doctor. Can you take him? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, that partnership is so key.
So the partnership is huge. And then you've got to have friends around you and a support system. And really this team of people that you can count on.
How have you seen the marketplace change from the time that your kids were little and fast forward 20 years? Have you seen a change? I mean, is the world evolving?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So when I came to the Valley and we moved into our little neighborhood, which I loved, I was one of 2 moms in the whole neighborhood who had a full-time job. So you talk about mom guilt. Everybody's getting the play groups together and doing all these things. Now, at that time, Brad's business was such that he was our Mr. Mom. So he would go to the play group with the kid.
Knowing Brad, he loved.
Loved it. Loved it.
That's great.
So at that point in time, there weren't all these women in leadership roles in the Valley, and there wasn't this peer group of women that we have now to talk with each other and commiserate and help each other out.
You've been very instrumental in building that. It's clearly been a passion of yours and something that you've really, as someone who came into the Valley, 14 years ago and then went back to work 7 years ago, I thank you, because it really is, I think, a much more inviting and warm environment for women to do whatever it is they want to do with their lives. But you played a big role in that. Why was it important to you to keep working, and why was it important to you to kind of fight the fight or set the example or change the conversation? And was it purposeful? I mean, how much of it was purposeful and how much of it is retrospective?
Well, I never thought about not working. So it was not ever on my radar to take time off of my career and stay home and then go back.
Okay.
So it didn't really cross my mind. So from that perspective, it was purposeful. My mom, she ran her piano business out of our living room when we were little. She was always very involved in the community with the chorus. And then when we were a little older, then she went back to school and she was the band director in the school district for 18 years. So the example that I had was also a working mom, but a very available working mom.
Okay.
So that was probably the foundation and the premise about which I was trying to model myself.
What would be your message to working moms today? Like, if you could give moms a message and tell me, what would you tell me?
I would say you can do it. There are jobs, there are careers, there are ways that you can have a fulfilling career and be a leader, not only in your community, but in your business, and manage a family successfully. You just have to be brave and be willing to be honest with your employer about what the situation is. I go back to the example when my boss asked if I would come to Bethlehem, kind of funny, at
Yeah.
Christmas time, and give this a try. And I said, sure, if I can bring Reed. Well, at the time, I didn't quite realize how brave that was.
Yeah. And progressive.
But I did it, and he said yes. So often I think we come up with all these reasons why it's not going to work, I won't be able to manage it, though they won't let me. And the worst that can happen is you ask and they say no.
But you have to ask.
You gotta
if you don't
ask.
ask, you won't know. And I think that I found that very early on, I felt like things had to be compartmentalized.
Yes.
When I was at work, I was at work. When I was at home, I was at home. And the more I started to share with my clients, my staff, members of the community, that I had a family obligation or I had to say no to something because of something with my family, it was so fascinating. People were so understanding and empathetic because they're mothers and fathers and they got it and they said, oh, your kids first. Oh, no, we can do that as a conference call.
Yes.
Or we can do it. And of course, technology is making this easier and easier.
It is.
So that's great advice. Well, before I let you go, I do want to talk about a couple of things.
Okay, sure.
I would like to ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
And they're just somewhat random in nature, but they'll be
All
fun.
right.
Okay. If you could relive one day of your life, which day would it be?
Oh my gosh.
I know, that's hard, right?
There's so many.
All right, I'll give you three. If you could
Okay.
relive 3 days of your life, what would they be?
Well, I think without the pain and suffering associated with it, each day that the kids were born.
Right.
Like the after.
The miraculous
The
arrival
miraculous,
of the
like,
beautiful
there
child.
they are.
Not
Yeah.
the labor.
Yeah,
The
none of the
delivery.
things leading up to it, but
course.
just the end time when you wake up and you're like, oh, here they are. And so that would be one. I think our wedding, that was
Great day.
really very cool. And this is sort of an obscure thing, but my dad was a very successful civil engineer. And he was inducted into the National Institutes of Science. And Reed and Shay were relatively young, and we went down to Washington and saw him receive this award. And it was just a very special day because here they were, little kids in this wonderful environment with their grandpa. It was just a beautiful, wonderful day.
That's neat. That's cool. Very cool. If there was one food that you couldn't live without, or you wanted to have every day of the rest of your life, what would that food be?
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. How do you like
Love.
it? Any form?
I like, right now I'm like a natural crunchy. I like
Okay.
crunchy versus creamy.
Okay.
So,
But on anything? Will you eat it on fruit, on toast, on...
yes, I particularly like it on bananas.
Have you ever had it on oatmeal?
I haven't put on oatmeal.
I eat
Now,
peanut
that's a
butter
good
in oatmeal.
idea.
Just so you know, I do a little milk, a little either honey
I
or
should
brown
try that
sugar,
'cause I
and
love
peanut butter. If you love peanut butter, you will love this
And
combination.
I love apples.
I have to credit my stepmother, Lisa, for that
All right, I'm
tip.
going to try
She
that.
taught me that when I was
love
8,
it.
and it's still one of my favorite. My kids love it too. Look at that,
love
peanut
it.
butter recipe sharing.
It's great.
If you could take 3 people to dinner, who would they be?
Are they?
Doesn't matter. You don't have to know them. They can be alive, gone. 3 people at dinner table with you.
Well, I would take Elmer
Yes.
because I miss him. I would love to have dinner with Robert Kiyosaki. He's the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
And I've read a number of his books. And my favorite one is Before You Quit Your Job, which I read after I quit my job. So it would have been good. If you want to read it before you quit
Before
your
you
job.
quit your job, read the book.
But he helped me see business differently, the way he writes his books. So I don't know if you've ever read
I have
Rich
not.
Dad, Poor Dad,
No.
but it's
I've heard of it, but I have not read it.
yeah,
Okay.
it's phenomenal. And then I don't know how I would communicate with her, but I think Helen Keller would be really cool.
She would be fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she would be cool.
Well, nowadays there must be probably more modern ways to communicate as well.
I'm sure, but like you
thinking.
just think of what
She
the way
accomplished.
she lived and what she accomplished. I was always fascinated by her.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice I've ever been given is, there's probably 2 of them, but the best one was when you need somebody's help, that you're intimidated by, ask them for their advice. And that has been a phenomenal tool for me to get comfortable with people that maybe I'm intimidated by. And I always learn something great from them.
So now you know that when people come to you asking for help, they're intimidated by you and really want your advice.
Or maybe they just want my
Because
advice.
they heard this.
But I think it's a great way.
It is a great way.
To get somebody's help and get inside their head, because people love to be asked for advice.
Right. Ask their advice, receive their help.
Yeah.
What is the piece of advice that you would most like to give people? If you can give someone one piece of advice, what is it?
Don't let fear get in your way.
Well, that means you're really working at the perfect place right now, right? Isn't that the slogan?
Oh, live fearless. That's funny. I didn't even think of that.
That is.
I should have said live fearless. That would have been a great little
You said it in a way
hashtag
that
live
we knew it
fearless.
was authentic and not really just saying that.
But I didn't say it for that reason.
But
so
there you
that's
have it. So that is
interesting.
great. Wonderful. Anne, thank you so much for being here. It's been great talking
Thank
to you.
you for
I feel like I
having
could talk
me.
to you all day.
I could too. It's
I
really
learned so
fun.
much. This harp musical thing we're going to revisit. I can feel it. Brad, you better
not
get ready
playing-
with your clarinet.
Not
It's
playing
coming.
the harp.
All right, everybody, you've been listening to Unscripted with Ashley Russo. My guest, Anne Baum from Capital Blue Cross, is here today. Do not forget, her book is out there, Small Mistakes, Big Consequences. It's been fun having you. You guys can catch us Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Keep listening. Lots of contests, lots of fun. Thanks for being here, guys.